All set, Charles.
Charles, where's that? Charles.
You're up.
Didn't know if you did.
Not that old yet. Good afternoon. It's time to start the Human Services Committee meeting. Called to order with a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Foster.
Here.
Commissioner Hovey Wright.
Here.
Chairman Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Leering.
Here.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Here.
Commissioner
Here.
Holmet.
Here.
Commissioner Snyder.
Excused.
Commissioner Wilkin.
Here.
Next up is approval of the minutes for January 7th, 2020.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved by Commissioner Foster, supported by Commissioner Hughes. Any questions or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor use a vote of saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that motion passes. Next up is public comment on an agenda item. Is there anyone in the public who would like to have a comment on an agenda item? Seeing no one stepping forward, we'll move on to items for consideration. First up is HS 2002-03. Authorize staff to add J&T installers as a vendor for the 2020 and 2021 DTE Test and Tune program.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Foster and supported by Chairman Hughes. Any questions? Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor use the vote of saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that motion passes. Next up is HS 2002-04. Authorize the county administrator to provide a letter of authorization and approval accepting one bronze plaque for placement at the Veterans Memorial Park at no cost to Muskegon
So moved.
County.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Foster, supported by Commissioner Hughes. Any questions or discussion?
Maybe
Commissioner Skolnick.
Commissioner Foster chairs the Veterans Advisory Committee. Maybe he'd just like to say something about this.
Actually, Mike, you wanna?
I
Mike's out there if you didn't see him.
Good afternoon, Mike Bow with Muskegon County Veterans Affairs. You would like to know about?
Just if not everybody knows about this.
Okay,
maybe you wanna tell
Understood. So there are two Medal of Honor recipients from Muskegon County. One is from the Civil War and one is from the Korean War. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Reichsey has had a pretty strong initiative of getting a plaque somewhere recognizing them on county property. He does have one already at the LST Museum ship, and he does have one at the Fruitport Veterans Memorial right across the street from the post office. And it seems that the good fit is to have one over there in the Veterans Park. That seems to be the appropriate place to have a recognition for a Medal of Honor recipient.
Thank you.
And at no cost.
All right, all in favor use the vote of saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that motion passes. Is HS 2002-05 authorized a reclassification of Veterans Resource Specialist position to Veterans Resource Administrator with the wage range from $22.98 to $28.96 per hour and retain DeCynthia Hatcher as the Veterans Resource Administrator with an effective pay start date of March 1st, 2020.
So moved.
Support.
Support has been moved and supported. Any questions or discussion? Chairman Hughes.
I just like to say Dee has been a real asset to that department. She's gone ahead and taken all kinds of classes. She's just an absolute gem in that department. She's so welcoming and so good with the veterans. I just can't say enough about her in that position. So she really deserves that recognition and change.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor use the vote of saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that motion passes. The next up is HS 2002-06, authorize Veteran Services to accept the 2020 County Veteran Service Fund grant and to authorize the county board chair to sign the agreement.
So moved.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any questions or discussion? Commissioner
Mr. Chairman, I kind of like Mike Bow to come up and just talk about this for a minute. This was a very big deal for the county.
Mike Bow again with the County Department of Veterans Affairs. The state of Michigan did this last year, a County Veterans Service Fund grant, and only about 30 counties applied for that. Each county that was going to apply would get a $50,000 base sum, and then for all the counties that didn't apply, they would split that money up with the ones that did apply. This year we had the same problem. There's only about 30 some odd that applied for this grant, which is great for us. But they rolled last year's money that didn't get spent. So whereas last year we were the recipients of $79,000 or up to, we didn't spend it all. We're now going to be the recipients of $119,000. The primary focus they would like us to really pay attention to is the outreach piece. We didn't have outreach in our last one, but the outreach piece is important. Although we do a wonderful job for our veterans that do come to us to file for claims, we are only touching the ones that come to us. We're not actually promoting ourselves outside. So we have only 16% of the veteran population in Muskegon County is in receipt of VA compensation benefits. The state would like to see that number raised. The only way to do that is to promote and get some outreach done. So we have a lion's share of the cost is in the outreach piece. And again, we get to go back to what we did before and offer some peacetime veterans emergent relief assistance. The state recognized that we did need that, and they authorized that for all the counties that were doing it this year. So it was a good thing. So, and all the other, and there's training involved as well. So in order for the service officers, myself and D. Hatcher, to maintain our accreditation, we have to go through CEU training conferences. So we're going to be able to use the state money to pay for us to go to those instead of using our millage dollars to do so.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make one comment. Mike, you said that you don't do a lot of outreach. And I know you do, because I called you one time about a guy that was sitting on the corner, with a sign that said homeless veteran, and you had already talked to him a couple different times. So that was really over and above, and I want to thank you for that. So you do outreach.
Yes, let me rephrase that, Commissioner. So we do that kind of outreach. We will go to locations and we'll speak to the prison, we'll speak to people in senior living centers and so forth.
Okay.
But we don't have a billboard up anywhere saying, hey, if you're a veteran, you can apply. We don't do mass mailings because we don't have an address listing of all the veterans in Muskegon County. The state won't release that to us. But what they will let us do is provide the state prepaid postage stamped envelopes with a letter inside of them, and then the state will mail those to the 12,400 veterans in Muskegon County. They will pay for 5 billboards to be up in throughout the county, 2 months worth. So we'll be able to touch and feel and see a lot more people that way than we are in our current model. But we do outreach. We just don't do that mass outreach where we're reaching all 12,000 veterans.
I just didn't want people to think you weren't doing outreach, because I know you are.
Yes. Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor use the vote of saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Next up is HS 2002-07. Authorize the board chair to sign the 2020 medical marijuana operation and oversight grant with the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs in an amount of $34,837, effective January 1st, 2020 to September 15th, 2020.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Mahoney, supported by Commissioner Foster. Any questions?
I do
Comments?
have a question on
Chairman
that.
Hughes.
I know medical marijuana oversight is a new thing, but does this cover the cost for you to do that?
Kathy Moore, Public Health Director. This grant, there's a collaborative of agencies in Muskegon County that will work together and utilize the funds. And as with most of our collaboratives, every agency sort of weighs in a little bit with their own resources. So ours will be staff that is funded by substance abuse prevention dollars. And I'm not sure what the other agencies bring to the table, but I know it's resources.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor use the vote of saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that motion passes. Next up is HS 2002-08. Authorize adjusting the fiscal year 2020 Senior Millage Award effective October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020, and authorize the designated Senior Millage Grants Administrator, Senior Resources to proceed with the administration of the programs.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor use the vote of saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Next up is HS 2002-09, authorize adjusting fiscal year 20 senior millage awards for Age Well Services Elder Abuse Prevention effective October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020, and authorize the designated Senior Millage Grants Administrator, Senior Resources to proceed with the administration of the programs.
I'd like to make a motion, please.
Right here.
I'd like to refer this back to the people who forwarded it or made the proposal, back to the committee to go through the regular process that where the numbers and where we get data and it's vetted. This is a really useful, I mean, I think elder abuse prevention is something we all agree with, but this particular request did not go through the process that the Senior Activities Committee had identified. And in fact, the committee rescinded their support in an email vote. Because of not going through the process. So we support the concept, but they need to go through the normal process. This does not preclude, this is not part of my motion, it does not preclude the promoters to, I mean, they can go to the cities and townships.
Let's do this. I was going
I'll
to say,
second
let's
the
get
motion so that we
motion
can have
before we
discussion.
go into discussion. So
Okay,
we
so-
have a motion and support.
Okay.
Now it's discussion. Go right ahead.
Okay, so, but this project can be, if there are cities and townships that want to support it and contribute their funds to this, that doesn't have to go through the vetting process. It's my understanding. Is that correct, Janet? Okay.
Okay. Any others? Commissioner Hughes?
I'd just like to say, this is a very valuable project to
Right.
our community and to our seniors especially. I would like to see this fast-tracked through there if at all possible. So, thank you.
Okay. And I know this was voted on, and then there was some information that came out afterwards. But I wanted to see if the prosecutor wanted to have any response or share any information with the board here.
Good afternoon again, DJ Hilson, Muskegon County Prosecutor. Yeah, I mean, certainly I've learned a lot, I guess, in this process, more than I thought I would ever learn on how this senior millage process works. And I'll be honest with you, I would recommend that this commission do is really look at how that process works, because, certainly when the commissioners decided to pass through some of the senior millage dollars, and I know, and there's some township officials here, and there's a lot of questions as to how that money was going to be spent and why it was being given to them. I'm going to credit Chief John Gale, who I'm sitting next to, who came to me and said, hey, look, my city is having these questions, and why don't we look at forming an elder abuse task force with 2 detectives and a prosecutor? And I thought, that's a fantastic idea. I mean, it's hard to put into words and numbers the amount of time and effort that these investigations take in order to properly investigate them and then successfully prosecute them. Giving it hours is doing it a disservice, because these are unique circumstances and unique cases. And so we went out and actually started doing that process. We, in fact, obtained commitments from a couple cities and some townships for some dollars. And that's when Chris Colley, who's sitting in the audience as well from Age Well Services, said, look, I think this is an excellent expansion of the millage money that we're already receiving. And so we're going to file a letter of intent, essentially, in order to expand that grant amount, which is, in fact, what she did. She made the deadline and filed that letter of intent to expand their grant to include some of the supplemental funds that were going to be on top of what some townships and cities had already designated that they earmarked for us. That led to a conversation with Commissioner Foster, and ultimately led to the decision that we would go into that committee meeting, which is an open meeting, I was told. And if it's not, please let me know. But it was an open meeting. And so myself, the sheriff, Mark Vanderstelt from Norton Shores attended that meeting. And I will grant the committee this, that, certainly they were presented with one number ahead of time and we came in with a different number. But that was, again, following, I think, some very good and sage advice. We were there to make sure that we were able to answer questions, which I thought we did. And ultimately, the committee voted to recommend the funding for this particular program. It was shortly after that that I heard kind of through the grapevine that there was some issues. And, quite frankly, I really wish that those issues would have been addressed in that open meeting forum where we could have properly addressed them. I understand, and quite honestly, we attempted to hopefully get the committee together in an emergency capacity to address some of those concerns. I don't know what ultimately happened with that, but certainly I told the committee this. I don't envy their position on how they manage these millage dollars. It's got to be difficult decisions, but I guess part of the reason why I guess we're having all these side discussions is that as a result of the recommendation and without any other information coming to me or my counterparts directly, we told the cities and townships that had earmarked the money for us to say, hey, you know what, go ahead and spend that on other programs because I think we're in a good position here. We've since lost that opportunity because of apparently some miscommunication. That to me is disappointing. From my aspect, I've heard from a lot of people, including supervisors and mayors, that this is something that this community absolutely needs and desires. I tend to agree. Again, I go back to my 20 plus years as a prosecutor, both as an assistant and as the elected, having worked on these cases with investigators, the kind of time and effort it takes. And so you couple that with already overburdened and underfunded staff, this seems to be the perfect solution. And so, I mean, I certainly appreciate the vote, and I should say I understand the motion. But if we're going to talk about process, let's talk about how this process went for this particular one. Because, I tend to believe, and look, I've been doing this job for a long time. I know many of the people in the room. I know you all very well. I'm a pretty easy guy to get along with, bottom line. And, I just wish that there had been maybe a little bit more communication, because ultimately, I think a lot of these issues probably could have been ironed out. And certainly, even though myself and the sheriff were in the room, we're all humble human beings. And if there were some concerns, I really wish that those would have been addressed and brought out at the time that we were present in the room so that we could take advantage of the generosity of the townships and cities that had already earmarked money for us. Unfortunately, we're unable to do that.
Sure, he'll be right.
Yeah, I'll just speak for myself, but I know there are others that share my concerns. We all agree this is a well-needed program. The dollar figures, however, came for the full year. It's $370,000, which is double what anybody else gets of any of the other recipients, and it funds 3 full-time positions. The concern is that this is going to gobble up too much of the pie, and that other sources need to be sought. We'd like to see it funded, but we don't think that it should. I don't think it should all come from the senior millage. Although certainly townships, I don't think that the deadline for the townships and supervisors for submitting their grants is up yet, is it? No. Okay. So I'm not sure that that's something that can't be undone. And then the other concern is that the group that submitted the request was a tri-county organization, and the millage funds are only from Muskegon. So what are you doing to address the other 2 counties?
Well, the Tri-County Protection Team is made up of different jurisdictions. However, we don't investigate each other's crimes. So this team would be strictly for Muskegon County. I'll just correct you a little bit on the numbers. It wasn't $370,000 for the full year. It was actually about 324, and that number probably needs to be tweaked because due to some mathematician on the committee, actually, we were able to determine that the number that was dealing for the rest of this fiscal year was too high. And so ultimately, the committee recommended just for the rest of this fiscal year, which I was in full support. In fact, from my standpoint, that would allow us to show our worth and to prove to the committee when we would come back and ask for the full year why it's necessary and why we need it. So from that standpoint, the recommendation was not for the full year. It was just for the rest of this fiscal year. And ultimately, this particular team that we're talking about would not only be responsible for investigating and prosecuting all the cases in Muskegon County, but more importantly would be tasked with the outreach part of this, which is probably just as valuable, if not more valuable than the investigative arm, which is going out to the nursing homes and to the areas where our seniors go and having sessions and conversations with them on how to protect themselves from not being victims. And ultimately, that would all be coordinated through Age Well Services. And I will say that, again, our senior services, adult protective services, Age Well Services, and the other senior agencies that make up part of that Tri-County Protection Team, this has been a goal and dream of theirs forever. To your point of other sources, listen, I would love for the county to find the money. And I would challenge you commissioners to help us find that money. And then we won't have to ask for these resources, a full boat of the resources. And so if we all agree that this is an important program, we all support it, then my challenge to the county commission is to let's find the money so that we don't need to rely entirely on the millage funds. And I would absolutely work with you all on that as best as I could. But, from my standpoint, we have buy-in from all of law enforcement in our county. We have buy-in from the agencies that deal with our seniors on this level. And I guarantee you we would have buy-in from the services and the agencies that these seniors use to live and survive every day.
Marcia had another question.
The chair of the Senior Activities Committee is in the audience. Perhaps it would be useful to hear your perspective. Yeah. Thank you, DJ.
Janet Perot, I'm the chair for the Senior Activities Committee. And I definitely agree with everything that's been stated, the need for this service in our county. There were a lot of questions after it left our committee. The questions kept coming up. So we just are respectfully asking that they follow the same RFP process that we have been using so that we can get some of those questions answered so we can move forward and give this the best chance of success we can. The big question, of course, is we would like to see the two things that are most important for senior millage dollars is that it be addressed to seniors in Muskegon County. So that's the first question. How is this a tri-county, as the name implies, but a Muskegon County program? That's just one of many questions we've had. So we respectfully ask that it go back through the RFP process that we've used in the past to grant funds.
Any other questions? Commissioner Hughes.
I joined the prosecutor at this meeting and am full support of the program, and I think that Janet is too, and we might have come in a little bit late, but the program is very, very necessary, and I think that we can see that because we're not the only county that's participating in a program like this, and I think it's, in my opinion, it's very easy to see how Muskegon County would have their own program, Ottawa County would have their own program, individual counties would have their own program, but they would benefit from the experiences that the other counties have too. I really hate to see this derailed like this because, I personally went to my township and told them that, we had gotten this grant from Senior Resources so that they didn't have to use their money for this program. So, I understand what DJ's saying that, we've lost some funding because of this. So I really like to see this move forward in the process as quickly as possible.
I couldn't agree more.
Commissioner
Let's get it
Larry.
back on the rails.
So I think the prosecutor did address that he was only looking at Muskegon County residents and potentially some of these seniors within the county that might live in our county may be being abused by residents out of the county. So there is a need for them working with other communities. But what is your timeline? I mean, so you've never sent out a request for a proposal for this, apparently.
No, we haven't.
All right. So I don't think that we can complain about him being proactive and actually addressing the need within the community. What is your timeline for representing this? You'd send out a request for a proposal, and when would that go out? When is your next senior millage resource committee meeting, and how long would it take to put this back together again?
The third Tuesday of the month is our next meeting, and we are just firming up the new timelines that are being set by Senior Resources for the RFP process. So those are beginning soon. So I would hope, from what I've seen, and please correct me if I'm wrong, April, it would come before our committee again. And hopefully we would work with them so that all the questions would be answered and it could go through as quickly as possible.
So the RFP wouldn't go out until the third Tuesday in March, and then he would have to resubmit, and then it would be decided on in April, and then it would come before the next. So we're basically, before it would come before our full board, would be mid to end May, possibly.
And hopefully by then we'd have all the questions worked out and it could hit the ground running from there.
I have one more question for the prosecutor.
Commissioner, before you ask, can I just, because I was at the meeting as it relates to timelines, and I don't know if the timelines, and I don't know if they've shorted up. My understanding is that if we went through the RFP process, this program potentially doesn't get funded until October 1, just so the commission is clear on that. So I appreciate the request for fast tracking, but we're talking about next fiscal year, just so you're aware. But please, your question.
That kind of answers my question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. DJ, would you be willing to change the name of this from Tri-County to the Muskegon County first and foremost? To
Sure.
get rid of
If that's the source of confusion,
Heard
I'm
that
happy.
twice.
Yeah, I'm happy to change the name because I'm a law guy, so I get where we have to. I get the age range, and I get where it has to be spent, and I get who has to benefit from it. Totally understand. We got plenty of work here in Muskegon County to do.
Okay, and my second question is for you, Kathy Moore, if I may, please. I've heard the chairman from the senior, and I respect everything she says, but what can we do for our prosecutor to get this rolling a little quicker?
So the timeline that the chairperson, Janet, spoke of is for the fiscal year 21 grants that's effective October 1st. So any grants that would go outside of that process would happen just the way it happened. The committee would have to consider it. They would make a recommendation. It would come before this board and the board would make a decision.
So if I may. So what you're saying is when they meet on the 18th, our next meeting with this board, we could see it in front of us, even though we're not following protocol.
You could if they chose to make that recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Kathy Stair, if I could.
Go right ahead, please.
Kathy, this is not the first program that's come out of line,
Correct.
and they've been passed before too.
Correct.
So this is not an unusual request.
It's
come
not
before the
an
committee.
unusual process. It may be a unusual amount.
It is an unusual request, yes.
Yes.
But the process before has been successful numerous times.
Correct.
Commissioner Skolnick.
You know, I just using the numbers that were given to us. Listen, nobody's arguing about the fact that this is probably useful, but this millage was voted on by the citizens, in my mind, to enhance and improve the lives of seniors in this county, as many as possible. And for them to get, according to the document, it was $364,000. That's about 18% of the entire millage for this program. And I'm not against the program, but I mean, it's not what it would take. Some of it. Don't take 18% of this thing when there's so many other things that could be done. I'd like to see, I don't know if anybody's seen some of these. It hasn't happened yet. educational programs put on around the county, speaker programs. I mean, things to kind of enhance the lives of many people.
Some people would beg to differ that it has happened, but I would not be, I wouldn't be the one with that information.
Wait, Kathy, I'd also like to hear, maybe from the prosecutor, that I've been told, and I don't know if it's true or not, that many of these abuses of seniors that have to do with money are frequently from family members that never end up getting prosecuted.
I definitely wouldn't know that.
Well, I'll correct you. I've never been prosecuted,
No,
first and foremost. But yeah, that's true. That unfortunately, our seniors are taking advantage of the people they trust the most, and that's usually whether it be a sibling or a grandson, granddaughter, or a son or daughter. And just like the unique challenges of domestic violence cases where victims come in and want to dismiss cases and recant, or unfortunately in some of our gun violence cases where victims are afraid and they don't want to participate, we still find ways to successfully prosecute those cases because it's the right thing to do and it's the right message to send. And so to answer your question, Commissioner Skolnick, yeah, do we face challenges when it's family members? Absolutely. Does that halt us from doing what's right and what's just? Absolutely not. We work very carefully, and again, I think it highlights the reasons why it takes so much time. My chief assistant has met with a particular victim in a case probably about a dozen times, and it's an older gentleman. And when we do that, because they're always questioning, they're always wanting to make sure that everything is going according to the direction that they want to do. So if my chief assistant is spending time out of his day, which is important to make sure that this victim is properly notified and taken care of, that's certainly taking away from some of his other responsibilities, but we do it because it's just and it's the right thing to do. So at the end of the day, again, I appreciate, again, Commissioner Skolnick, you and I sit on a couple boards together, and I love your process of money. I get it, and I love you for it. Because you are a good set of eyes for that. But when we talk about enhancing seniors, I'm not sure what better enhances seniors than making sure that when they are taken advantage of, they're made whole. Or we talk about the education piece, which I think is just as valuable, if not more valuable, being able to reach those seniors every year with this specialized task force to talk to them about how do you keep yourself safe? How do you really put that phone down when it sounds like it may be your grandson in Tahiti who's in jail, right? How do you put that phone down? All those things. And so to me, this goes above and beyond what we can normally do as investigators and prosecutors.
Commissioner Hughes.
I'd like to just follow up on that a little bit. For one thing, even if they don't prosecute, they do stop the abuse. And I think that's an important thing for people to realize, that even though somebody might not get prosecuted, the people learn from this. And also, when we went before this committee, they had over $600,000 that wasn't spent yet, that was just sitting there. So,
and that I guess that's what the comment I wanted to make is that, I guess this initial process started because there was money trying to be expended that wasn't being expended. So we've got funds that we're trying to get rid of for the fiscal year. So to have a concern about the amount is kind of beyond me, because the ones that were asked were the ones that were already given something. And so now they're going back to the same ones to give them more, which I don't have a problem with. But, here's a new program and an opportunity to expend some of those funds for a program that works for the seniors. So I guess the hardest thing I had a time with was it being voted for and then saying, well, we want to redo this again. And it just kind of boggled me. I mean, that's what we appoint those folks for, to bring us the best decision, and then the decision comes, and then we have this. So I'm just concerned about this whole process, period, on how this is happening. But I'm with Commissioner Foster. I'm afraid of the complete do-over, and I'd like to see a way that we can maybe get these questions answered and keep this process moving, if it's that viable for the community, so that we can move this program forward and get this program started to help some of our seniors. And then I would definitely like to see, if we have extra funds left, that we also look for new programs and new people to be able to come in, not just the same ones all the time. That's just my 2 cents.
Commissioner Nix.
Commissioner Foster.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would like to ask the chairman of the senior, could you please streamline this at your next meeting and get the results to us as quick as you can so that we may, as a board, decide the future of the prosecutor's good intent?
We'd be happy to. We'd be happy to work with them before that meeting, so some of these questions that have been raised here today can be answered when it comes before us again. So hopefully
Could
we
we
can
do
get
an
it
early
back on.
meeting with that committee, with the prosecutor?
I'd be happy to call that meeting.
Prosecutor would do it, please. I think we need to streamline this as quick as we can. It sounds like a program we desperately need.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It sounds like we have one of our executives from the senior resources with us. Can we have her come up? Yes. State your name for the record, and
I'm Carla Benton with Senior Resources.
you had some things you wanted to share.
Well, just some clarifications. So the regular timeline process is this Thursday, February 6th, that the RFP will be invited to the public to begin to apply. And yeah, correct. That is for fiscal year 2021, beginning October 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the regular process. And as far as fast tracking the process, that's up to you. And I think in order for the committee to be able to make a healthy decision, they need to see some sort of proposal. It was just so quick in front of them. So typically when a proposal is decided on, they see the full proposal or at least a full, outline of what's expected. Other questions about process?
I guess I do. I
Yeah.
have a question.
Commissioner.
Your vote to do this was unanimous.
Correct.
So I wondered why it is that all of a sudden that somebody asked to have it rescinded and they rescinded it. I mean, it wasn't and it wasn't like, don't they already have senior resources already have some with Ottawa County and some of the other counties? So it's not like you don't know what's going on in that program because they're doing it in Ottawa County too. It seemed like it was,
a couple clarifications there. And I do the whole, whether it's happening in Muskegon County, it would be falling underneath the Tri-County Protection Team, but under the multidisciplinary team, which is a Muskegon County only project. So that's not an issue. The individuals, so Senior Resources is not a voting member. We were present at the meeting, but we're not voters at the meeting. But that the concept of this new elder abuse, having new people hired, et cetera, that was presented to them during the meeting. So they were not able to see before the meeting any information. So it was just the information that they received during the meeting, and then they had to make that decision. I cannot answer for the voters. I was not a voter. But I think if they had received information prior to, it would have been helpful.
You said everything I was expecting.
I was just surprised that if they'd had more questions, they didn't ask the questions. When they called for the vote, nobody said, I don't know enough. They voted yes.
And I fairly can't answer that, being not a voting member. So, other questions about process?
Commissioner Larry.
So let me understand this correctly. What we're voting on today is to provide funding for 2020, and what we're suggesting, even with a fast track, it's moving it back to 2021.
That's a question for you. So the normal procedure would be for 2021, starting in this coming October. But if you as a body decide to fast track it, then
well, fast tracking would be approving it today. So I've got one other question about this. So I actually hear of elder abuse complaints every single day where elders are being taken advantage of their financial resources, not necessarily in Muskegon County, but throughout the state of Michigan. And every single day I'm assuming some of this happens in Muskegon County too, where a senior maybe has Alzheimer's or some other disability, and the first thing they've got their kids or grandkids trying to take it out of their bank accounts or their 401ks. And I do hear of these situations happening regularly across the state. And I think there's an opportunity here to kind of nip that in the bud in Muskegon County so it doesn't progress another year. And this seems like it's expensive, but when we're talking about investigating cases and prosecuting them, it costs a lot of money to do that. And I don't really see this being out of line, I guess, personally, particularly because it's just Muskegon County residents that we're going to be serving.
And Commissioner Laring, I haven't heard anybody disagree with you on that. So that's an agreement, I think, from voices I've heard. But the only two things that I would pose to question is, if it's an ongoing project, it's going to cost perhaps $364,000 per year to run. Is that a piece of the pie that you want the millage to go to? That's your decision as commissioners, as an ongoing project. And then other projects may then have to diminish in amounts. So that's something for you all to decide. And then secondly is that that ideally the millage is supposed to be a funding of last resort, that organizations are seeking other forms of support, that it's not the millage only supporting an entire project. And that also would be up to you as commissioners.
Ms. Moore, could you please step up for a moment? What was the amount of the funding that we need to use for the fiscal year?
There's no amount you need to use for the fiscal year because the dollars are always carried over and reserved specifically for millage use. But the available funds included, there were sufficient funds to fund this project as well as the other two motions that is on the agenda for today.
And would there still be funds left for the current fiscal year, even after paying?
There will be yes, there will be. So the difficult part is that when this board approves grants, you approve it at $1 amount and then we reimburse based on actual. So it is anticipated that some of the grants that you've already obligated yourselves to may not expend all the dollars by September 30th. So then those dollars roll into next year again.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Larry.
So if I understand this correctly, this could be a pilot program until, if it's successful, we could or could not approve it next year depending on its success ratio.
That's correct, but according to the timeline, so even if this is approved today, this is for this fiscal year that ends September 30th, then the group would have to submit a letter of intent within the next month and complete the entire RFP process to be included into the fiscal year 21 granting cycle.
Thank you.
So this would be considered a pilot, and then it may or may not get funded going forward after this fiscal year. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Foster.
DJ, please, one more time. And I hate to keep beating this, but if you were to get some funding today of, say, $100,000 prior to, would that be enough to start your program? And I'm saying if we follow the process, and I want to respect the committee's process, but I don't want to go against them. But if we got a project like this in front of us, I think we need to move forward.
Well, you know, I don't have the budget numbers in front of me. I think we could potentially squeeze an investigator out of that. I don't know that we would get 2 investigators. I don't think we'd get an investigator and a prosecutor out of that money.
So in your opinion, are we better to wait to the committee meeting on the 18th?
Well, quite honestly, there's been a lot of ideas thrown. I'm a visual kind of learner. So I'm happy to do whatever you as commissioners want to do. I just am very passionate about this particular project. And I know my law enforcement friends are as well as Age Well and all the other senior services. And so, so I'm trying to wrap my head around what we're trying to decide here. If we're trying to decide whether or not you guys are going to fund for the rest of the fiscal year based on this vote, and I'm not sure Marcia's motion covers that. Her motion was to table, I think. And so
it was not to table.
I'm sorry.
It was to refer it back.
Refer it back
so
to the
that
committee.
You go through the normal process.
All right. So her motion is refer it back so we go through the normal RFP process. I think we understand what the timelines are there. My understanding from listening to the discussion is twofold. A, you as commissioners can decide to not vote that motion through and then make a new motion, I guess, to essentially fund this for the rest of the fiscal year based on the dollar amount that we had requested, or make a motion that we go back to the committee and fast track it outside the normal process, if I'm getting that all correctly, so that us as investigators and law enforcement can answer whatever questions they may have. Look, whatever you guys want to do, I'm fine with. I just want to make sure that definite timelines are set if we're going to go in that direction, so that we have a clear understanding of what our expectations are and what we can expect from the committee. I don't want to leave this commission meeting with any unanswered questions on my own mind, because again, I don't want to miss an opportunity to really, I guess, benefit the senior citizens of Muskegon County.
Commissioner Mahoney.
I have a couple of questions. Number one, I would just soon see it go back to the committee with a written proposal
Yeah.
so that we can look directly at what the costs are, what the per unit charges are,
Right.
how many seniors do you anticipate will be serviced. It's just pretty loosey-goosey at this point, and I'm not suggesting your program is terrible. It's just our understanding of it is, okay, you investigate, you prosecute, and then we somehow reimburse you for that. Because we operate on a reimbursable project, not if you don't spend the money, you don't get it.
Sure.
So I would just as soon go back to the regular
Yeah.
committee, have those questions answered, have it in writing so that the folks can take a look at it rather than just a presentation.
Yes, I'd like to revise my motion. Can I withdraw the first and
We'll
substitute it?
withdraw my second.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to have the Tri-County group go through, submit an actual RFP following our normal procedures to the next committee meeting, which will fast track it, and then the committee will decide what to do from there. But basically, to have them submit a written proposal, providing all the data that we normally get that was not on this proposal in terms of units of service, et cetera, to the next committee meeting, which is
And will they have that back to us by our next Human Services Committee meeting?
I would,
special meeting.
if I could, I would suggest we have a special meeting to fast track that so it will be here. And so I will second your,
Mhm.
I don't
Long
necessarily,
and convoluted.
I don't necessarily believe we need to go through the regular process, but we do need to have some
Written proposal.
written proposal.
Yeah.
So just so that I understand, I mean, I'm going to give my business card to the chair so that she can email me deadlines, because I work on deadlines. But we're talking about, just so I'm completely clear in my understanding, we're talking about this fiscal year. Monies for this fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay.
We're asking it to be back 30 days from now to us,
Okay. Fair enough.
correct?
Or sooner.
Sure.
Or sooner.
Yes, or sooner.
But you need to fill out the
Oh, I
normal
totally understand that.
yeah.
Not a problem.
RFP.
Could I just say one
Commissioner Skolnick.
BJ I'm not picking on you anymore.
That's all right.
This is what bothers me about this. This program is fine. This spending money as fast as possible is stupid. It's not like it was your own money. You'd run around. How fast can I spend my money? Think about it. I mean, this a few weeks isn't going to make any difference. It's like this is how big mistakes happen, and I don't want to make any more big mistakes. Anyway, that's it.
Commissioner Laring.
So I know you want to vote on this, but this is kind of a sideline note. Is the Senior Resources Committee covered under the Opens Meeting Act? I'm just wondering how they had a vote to approve this, and then somehow there was a mysterious email vote that floated around afterwards. Does that cover under the Opens Meeting Act?
That brings up a lot of different questions.
Yeah.
And, I agree. I asked the same thing. And
Kathy Moore, Public Health Director. The bylaws actually stipulate that the Senior Activities Committee is subject to the Open Meetings Act. So when they took the vote via email, I did send an email to the chair just asking or just letting her know that it's not official or that vote is not ratified until they have a meeting to actually vote in public. At that time, I asked or suggested maybe if they wanted to have a special meeting, call a special meeting before that time so that the vote could take place before this meeting, and I think Prosecutor Hilson was willing to attend that. She did let me know that she had, in the email, she had offered a meeting or offered to meet, and she responded back to me that no one, maybe one person responded, but she didn't get enough response to actually call a special meeting. So it's my understanding and my intent that the vote that they took via email is not official until their next meeting, which would be on the agenda for them to take the vote in public as an open meeting to conform with the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you.
And I have one other question. So is the never mind. I'm good.
I see Miss Coley is in the office, who's with Age Well, and I was going to have her come up and speak on her play and support. But go ahead, Miss
Lisa
Fitzgerald.
Tyler, Communications Director at Senior Resources. I just need to clarify, this is not a Senior Resources Committee. And I understand that they're held at the building we are located in, but they are not our committee. We're not a voting member. We do not set the agenda. We report to them. You appointed that committee. I just need that clarification. It is not our committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. On
Commissioner
the
Foster.
18th, we have a Ways and Means meeting, and that would be the next senior meeting. Am I correct? Would we be appropriate in asking that we have a response that day from your committee? If the chair of Ways and Means would entertain it.
Which day?
18th
Of
this month.
February.
We just changed the whole motion.
No, okay, I'm sorry.
Well, motion
I
on the
was
floor.
just wondering if that would
Yeah,
be
her
a
motion
timeframe.
was bringing it back to the Human Services and
Oh, then never mind. I'll
okay.
withdraw that whole request.
Miss Coley.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Chris Colley, Executive Director for Age Well Services, the fiduciary of the original elder abuse grant. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. This work is really important to all of us. And what I hear everyone saying is that it's not the program, it's not the concept or the thought. We are happy to abide by any process. We are happy to do whatever you would like to do to prove that this is a very worthy cause. I understand that there are concerns about budgets. However, what I want to just reiterate is that Age Well Services is not asking for any more money than what we're currently getting in our elder abuse grant. The additional funds are going to support 2 detectives and a prosecutor, which are specialized, as you all know when you look at your county budgets, that those salaries commiserate with those credentials. And that is an important part, I think, to remember, because they are the ones who have the authority to conduct the investigation. Age Well Services or social workers or other professions do not have that authority. So in order for this to happen, this is a really crucial point. I also want to assure you that we're always looking for additional funding out there to look at, because we understand that one of the 3 tenets of the senior millage is that this is funding of last resort. We have looked for funding for at least 2 to 3 years to find funding that's out there to support this. One of those grants is the Victims of Crime Act funds, VOCA, which is comes through the state of Michigan, which are federal collected court fines and fees paid by perpetrators into the court victims or victims of abuse, neglect, or crimes in general to help them. Unfortunately, in my reach out just recently in the last couple of weeks to the State Office of Victims of Crime, unfortunately, they have received a significant decrease in dollars to the tune of 40% coming up this fiscal year. So therefore, there was an elder abuse grant a couple of years ago that they requested an RFP because across the nation what we're hearing is that this is an emerging crime. Much that we have heard around domestic violence and child abuse cases, elder abuse is way behind the times in looking at how we need to care for our elders. So just as we've heard a lot about human trafficking and sex trafficking in the last 5 to 6 years as an emerging crime, this is the newest emerging crime. And we obviously know that due to the population of individuals that are growing, that are age 60 and older, that this emerging crime is going to continue. So we continue to look for funds, but I will tell you that I have exhausted those regular resources to look for those funds to be able to supply, and we will always continue to do that. Age Well Services, as many of you know, is the largest service provider to seniors in Muskegon County. We do Meals on Wheels, we do congregate meal programs, activities that keep seniors active and healthy. We are one of the largest grantees, but it's also because we have 43 years experience in providing services in which the heart of our mission is to continue to help people live independently in their home as long as possible. So this is a perfect part of that mission. The Tri-County Protection Team has been part of that mission because Age Well Services also services individuals in Oceana and Ottawa County. So it's always been a collaborative of all three entities. But the exciting part is that because these relationships have fostered, especially through the multidisciplinary team approach that we have used together in the last 14 months to review 37 cases in which 9 are moving forward to prosecution with a 450% increase in prosecution. Ottawa County is paying attention, and starting this month, they are starting their own MDT. So now what we're seeing is that this work is growing and there is support in the West Michigan area. There is no other community in the state of Michigan that is doing this work in this manner. And I think that we have an opportunity to pave a path to protect the seniors and to carve something that will be not only uniquely represented in the state of Michigan, but also the United States. Therefore, I feel that it is an excellent use of dollars for the senior millage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I
I think we've
before we vote, can I just ask one question about the vote?
Sure.
We're voting now. We're voting. I'd like to know exactly what we're voting.
Good idea.
You want me to restate my motion?
I think Kathy.
Or
What do you
Kathy?
have written
Okay.
down? Pardon me?
Can I share one clarifying statement about timeline? Once again, Carla Benton, Senior Resources, and I'd just like to recommend that if it does do the fast track, which I'm hearing possibly happen, that I think the next committee meeting for the Senior Activities Committee is on Tuesday, March 18, which is 2 weeks from today, and I think that I'm sorry. It's March 17. I was thinking about St. Patrick's Day. 2 weeks from today in February. And so I think that the committee would need to see something in writing, a proposal or a brief proposal from Age Well Services about it, probably email to them by the 11th, which is a week from today, and then that would give them time to review it before they meet. So that would just be my recommendation to the timing of the process if it's fast tracked. Thank you.
And then I just want to follow up from that meeting. That vote could move things forward to our committees right after, correct?
Great.
Okay. And when is our next Human Services?
March 3rd.
Okay. So is everybody understanding that?
I'd like to
Are we
still
okay
like
with
to
that?
hear the motion.
That is the motion. The motion to submit a written proposal to the next committee meeting by March 3rd.
No, it would be by the 18th.
March 18th. No, February 18th.
Oh, to this committee.
Our committee
Right.
by March.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So that'll come back to us by March 3rd. Great. Any other questions? Clarity? I just want to say I'm glad we were able to work out a compromise. So looking forward to this process moving forward. Yes, ma'am.
So,
Roll.
point of order, I don't believe Marcia's motion was seconded.
It was seconded. I was going to say
Commissioner Mahoney.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Before we vote, Mr. Chair, your motion actually stated community development for the next committee meeting. I'm confused on the dates you were saying.
Well, it has to be, the proposal needs to be submitted in writing for the next Senior Activities Committee meeting on the 18th. Carla suggested that we receive it by the 11th, and then it come to this committee on March 3rd at our next Human Services.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Right.
Thank you.
If we vote this one down, we could still vote on the one that was.
If we
presented
voted this
before us.
motion down, we could go back to the original motion.
Thank you.
And stated number 9. Okay.
All those ready? Any unreadiness? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Skolnick.
Yes.
Commissioner
Absent.
Absent. Commissioner Wilkins. Commissioner Foster.
No.
Commissioner Hovey Wright.
Yes.
Chairman Hughes.
No.
Commissioner Leering.
No.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Yes.
Commissioner Nash.
No.
Motion fails.
Fails.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, he did.
can
it
I
was
make
a
a
tie.
motion?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to make the same motion as Commissioner Hoovey, right, except for to bring it back to the next available meeting on the 18th, which would be Ways and Means.
Oh, to move it up.
Move it the same day as that committee, and take their recommendation that day.
I'll support that.
It's been moved and supported. And I guess we don't need any discussion on that. It's pretty clear. Commissioner
I
Laird.
know we don't have legal counsel here, but can you move it out of the Health and Human Services Committee and put it in Ways and Means?
By a vote of this committee, I would think you could.
Absolutely.
Yes, we've done that before. When it doesn't meet the deadline of a grant or the wishes of the board, we have moved it out of another committee to Ways and Means.
So you're asking that come back at February 18th?
Ain't that the Ways and Means? Pretty sure that's what's on our calendar for that day.
Correct.
Okay with that.
I got a question. At February 18th is the day that you have
The same
your
day
meeting.
as they meet in the morning at 10 a.m. Am I
Yeah,
right,
we
ma'am?
meet at 10.
And
So
so
they
we
would
could
have an
get it
answer
from
to
them
us
at
by
that time.
noon or 1.
That sounds fair. Sounds good to me. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Wilkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright.
Yes.
Chairman Hughes.
Yes.
Commissioner Leering.
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Yes.
Commissioner Nash.
Yes.
Commissioner Stoll.
Yes, and I'd like to thank Commissioner Foster for moving that to my committee.
You're welcome, Bob.
And that motion passes, correct? Thank you. We'll move on. HS 200210, authorize adjusting fiscal year 20 senior millage awards for major home repairs effective October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020. Authorize senior millage grant administrator to proceed.
So moved.
Support.
Second.
Moved and supported. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor use the vote of saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
One opposed? And that motion passes. HS 2002-11, authorize public health to accept special funding in the amount of $5,000 effective October 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. Authorize the public health director to sign the related contract.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor use the vote of saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that motion passes. Next up is old business. Any old business come before this committee? Any new business? Any new business come before this committee? Any public comment like to have any comment?
Thank you again. It's Tony Barnes, Dalton Township Supervisor. Really? Seriously? I mean, as the president of the Muskegon County chapter of the Michigan Township Association, we did have a presentation by our prosecutor and our sheriff. We also, I want to come here and let you know that where was this settlement when we came to you, both with 2 Republican supervisors and 2 Democrat supervisors asking to table it? We didn't get this settlement from the same commissioners commenting that we're trying to rush through and spend money. We asked you to table it. Seriously? Seriously, you couldn't table it for us. And now we've already obligated money for this program, only to be told, hey, we don't need the money. Find other programs and we'll take care of it. Now we're not getting that done. I appreciate the fact that you fast tracked it to the 18th. I really do. But there was more discussion. You spent an hour on one topic, and we couldn't even get you to table it, to even talk to the supervisors that is going to have to implement these programs because we don't have the staffing. So it's really frustrating to all of us that you won't even hear or listen to us or take input from us, and we're the ones that have to implement these programs. So I really hope that you do follow through with this fast tracking. I hope you guys get it together, pass this, and fully fund this thing. You've heard from everybody in here that clearly wants to get this done. You should have just voted the pilot program today instead of kicking it down the road. You had all the information that you're going to get on this has already been discussed. Should have just handled it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move to final board comments. Any comments on this? I'd like to just have one. It's just everything that I heard today. I'd love to see us have a workshop on the processes for this committee and how we can better secure that these processes are actually followed. Because I've heard so much through this process,
I do hear a lot of
and
complaints
some that wasn't even shared today, but it's so many different things. And I'd just like to see us have a workshop and really try to figure out how we can iron this out. And definitely would like to have Ms. Moore involved with that too.
Sure, we'll get it set up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other final board comments? Commissioner Larry.
Yeah, so, hey, I just, Tony Barnes and I don't agree on much, but I do agree with him on this issue. And I enjoy the lengthy debate we have here. A lot of times these meetings feel rushed, and this is our opportunity to have these kind of discussions, and I would encourage us all to consider spending a little more time here discussing these issues. So I